Just as businesses have return on investment measures, where they track what they do with their money and what returns are generated, people are a significant component of the working force, our environment, and our investment. At PeopleSync, we call this Return on Employment, or ROE, and it's a key metric for measuring and tracking the return that people give us. In the next few minutes, we're going to provide a quick tutorial of the PeopleSync ROE calculator and discuss the framework that you can apply into your business context to measure in a very simple and effective way the return you generate from people. The calculator can be found on our website under the Value section. Mapping ROE for your own organization or division can be done by answering 9 questions to describe your environment. These 9 questions tell us about your organization in areas such as how you recruit, how you train, and so on. Let's look at each of them in turn. The first question asks how you recruit people. There are 3 ways which you can do this. The first is to use your internal HR department. The second is to use recruiting firms to source the appropriate people. And the third is to use staffing agencies to outsource staff when needed. This question asks what the balance between these 3 elements is. For this example, we're going to use a hospital group that has 54 hospitals under management, approximately 2,500 beds, and over 3,500 patients at any point in time. They're a busy organization, and their balance is to source roughly 50% from HR in-house, roughly 30% from recruitment firms, and about 20% outsourced labor, depending upon the incidence of disease and emergencies in their organization. Question 2 is, on average, how long does it take new people to become fully productive? In our hospital group, the majority of their 27,000 employee nurses have a 5-week induction and training class, and they are expected to be fully productive at the end of the course. So we select 5 weeks on the slider. The third question is what percentage of your people you have to replace in a year. In other words, your staff turnover. The hospital group we're looking at has an 18% staff turnover. This is important because it goes to how often you need to retrain and rehire people. Question 4 asks for 60% of the jobs in your organization. What form of job or person assessments do you have in place in order to determine what is required on the job to be successful? Our hospital group is very formal about this, and they formally assess skills and use specific psychometric profiles per job as part of the operating procedures. Question 5 asks about the nature of your organization's products or services that account for the majority of your revenue. What the Shadowmatch research has differentiated are 3 levels of involvement. The first is a simple relationship, straightforward with no complicated involvement whatsoever. This would be typical of a more automated environment. The second is where we require some level of interaction and take some action on behalf of the customer, but that action is still relatively simple. The third is very complex interactions where we exchange detailed information with many interactions and interpretations on behalf of the customers. This question really involves people to different degrees, and it indicates how soon we expect people to be productive on the job and how much training we'll need to provide them from a benchmark point of view. Question 6 asks to what extent the business is dependent upon people for its survival, and we ask what would happen to this business if all of your staff were completely unproductive or absent for 2 to 4 weeks. Now, a transactional bank that has automated structures, for example, will not have a great impact, but for our hospital group, there will be a major impact to our revenue. Question 7 asks about a similar impact of the staff on the customer and how important they are in delivering a customer service framework. How would all of your customers be impacted if your staff were completely unproductive or unavailable for 2 to 4 weeks? We have a range of options here, and our hospital group customers, in our case patients, would obviously be seriously and critically impacted. Question 8 pertains to performance frameworks, and how an organization manages people from a performance perspective is critical to their levels of productivity. There are a range of choices that we can make, and in our hospital group, performance management is extremely critical, and they religiously use staff performance contracts, they hold regular performance reviews, and ensure that their top performers are incented and that their poor performers are placed on appropriate training programs to recover them. Question 9 asks how you close the loop in terms of selecting people by determining the final placement decision used for the majority of new hires. We assume that you review resumes and skills, but it's important to know the extent to which you use interviews versus assessments, and if you do use assessments, what type of assessment do you use? The hospital group is very strict about the way they review people, as they hold panel interviews and use targeted assessments on specific individuals as part of their standard operating practice. It always happens. After completing all 9 questions, the final result shows the graph of your return on employment. The x-axis shows percent of cost to company. So for example, if someone has a salary of $30,000, then that's their cost to the company, and that's the number we would use. Representing it as a percentage allows us to equalize it across all job types. So what the graph shows, as the line is below 0, is the investment in the recruitment process before it bottoms out as the employee reaches the point of productivity. The pink line represents the ROE best practice that leading organizations are achieving, and the blue line represents our case study. We can see that our point of productivity is a little more than minus 50%. What that means is that we're investing $15,000 and 1.5 months against an employee with a salary of $30,000 before that person gets to a point of productivity. Our research shows that the best practice is 1 month and just under 28% of cost to company. With the same $30,000 salary, that represents nearly $6,000 in cost savings. We then see the lines slope up and to the right, with the pink best practice line being steeper than our case study. Our hospital group achieves break-even in just under 27 months. This means that they need to keep their people for over 2 years before they break even, whereas best practice is just over 9 months. In order to close the gap, we see the critical focus point as being able to select the right people in the right positions. We have to be able to consistently pick the right people that will precisely fit the context of their environment and remain in place. Only by doing this do we achieve the return on employment and results that we expect. Thanks for listening, and we now invite you to benchmark your own return on employment by trying out the calculator for yourself. You can find it on our website under the Value section.